Thanks for staying with us. Now, our next guest is a former drug addict and dealer here to share his story of overcoming addiction and turning his life around.
Daniel Moore, great to have you with us on the
Good morning to you. Thanks for coming in.
Pleasure to have you here with us. An incredible story. Let's go back to the very start, though, about the circumstances with where you grew up and how you turned to drugs.
Yeah, so I would have grown up in a well-respected home. I was loved, but I suppose coming from foster care, I would have had a chip on my shoulder and I would have grown up carrying that. So the area I grew up in, I would have led myself into drug addiction, selling drugs from a young age, experiencing drugs and taking drugs from a young age. I lost my job. From losing my job then, I needed some sort of income, so I found drugs was the way forward to make an income.
So what age are you talking, like, kind of you started?
So I would have, I suppose, like, experimenting at a young age, probably about 12, 13, smoking.
How do you experiment drugs like that? Like, who's giving it to you? How did you get into that set?
So it was, do you know what it was? It was like one of the guys had gotten a lump of hash from his older brother and said, oh, what's this? And we had no idea how to use it, no idea what to do with it. But we experimented in it and we tried to smoke it, but it was from then onwards, I was like, you know what, I'm intrigued here, what feeling I get from this. And I think it was the acceptance, how I felt as well.
Was there an abandonment issue there? Because, like you're saying, you were in foster homes. You never knew your dad, but you did know your mum.
Yeah.
But you never really got on, you never really
had a relationship
with her.
as such. But I was in the home that I was in, I was loved. I was cared for, everything. But me personally, there was something in me that was making me feel not a part of, you know.
And then, of course, you lost your job.
Yeah.
And felt that you had to support your partner and your newborn child as well, that you had to try and bring money in and that selling drugs was the way forward.
Yeah, so I would have always liked to be the person to support and provide. I don't know what it was, but I said I needed to make money, and it was the quickest thing that I thought I could have done was to sell drugs. So whatever money I had, I invested it into the trade, and that was it then. It spiraled out of control after.
Can I ask you then, when you say you invested into the trade, what do you mean you invested money?
So any money I had...
So did you upfront bought the drugs to then sell on?
Yeah, so any money I had, I put into this, knowing that I had to provide. Drugs was a quick and easy way to gain money in my area, and in Ireland, people know that now. But it's not something that lasts long. It doesn't last.
How much would you be making?
You could make, some people could make €1,000 a day, if not more.
A day?
A day, easy.
Yeah. I mean, you can see how, and how simple it is to get into if it's just like that.
It's like for somebody who doesn't know anything about it and they hear €1,000 a day or they see these flashy cars, you're gonna go towards it, you know, you're gonna...
But I was reading you talking then about the guards. So the guards then came across your operation because they're professionals and you always felt, listen, I'm an amateur in this game. So, as you say, it doesn't last long. I mean, what happened?
So, yeah, so I was actually out of my apartment at the time and I received a phone call. They'd obviously gained access to my apartment and they had called me and said, look, this is Blanchetown, I think there's Garda station, we've gained access, I think you might want to come home. Well, to say that my heart sunk when I got that phone call, but in my head I was thinking, how could this have happened to me? You know, I thought I'd never get caught. And for anybody that's doing anything like that, I'm sure they'll always think they'll never get caught, but I thought that. And I remember I went into the house and the guard says to me, look, we found something really substantial here. We weren't expecting this. And I sniggered at him and said, well, I wasn't expecting you, you know.
How much stuff did you have in your apartment?
So it was 59 quarters of crack cocaine bagged up in a safe and about an ounce of heroin. So you're talking about 36,000's worth.
Did your partner know that you were dealing?
No, at the time she didn't. Obviously afterwards I had to come clean. And with her being the person she is, she supported me. She knew, obviously, look, you've done it to support the family and stuff. She did support me after I told her.
Because when you were a cabinet maker, you were sort of saying, like, people have got to realise you were in a proper job. You were a cabinet maker, you had a trade, and you lost, and you were like happy that just to continue that. Your partner, as you're saying, she was expecting a baby for you and everything like that. So life was grand until you lost the job. Yeah. But you still wanted to support you. You couldn't see any other way.
I couldn't see any other way, any quick way. In my head, I had a child on the way, and I did not want to be unsupportive. I didn't want to have problems or issues. I just knew I needed the support. And maybe that stems from growing up, you know, not having that father figure, not having that bond with a biological father. I probably wanted to be there more.
And then the judge, I suppose, knew that as well, because what is normally a mandatory 10 years prison, he gave you a 4-year sentence.
Yeah, I remember being in court. Still to this day, I remember him telling me, look, this does carry a 10-year sentence, but you did take full admissions to it. You didn't waste our time. A lot of people would drag sentences out like that over a couple of years. I wanted to get it over and done with. I was caught red-handed. And he handed me a 4-year sentence. Obviously the shock of it, but also the relief that it wasn't 10 years.
What's the fear like first day going into prison?
It was very surreal. It was almost like, how is this after happening? I remember walking down into the holding cell and almost just sort of giggling to myself with nerves, as if to say, look, I actually can't believe this happened. Like, is somebody just going to jump out and say, look, we're joking, you can go back up now to your family, you know? But it wasn't the case. I was there and I was looking at 4 years in prison, and it was one of the scariest moments of my life, you know, and I had to come to terms with where I was and what I had to do.
And of course, this is Mountjoy, which is notorious for drugs in the prison. So how did you avoid that, or did you avoid that in the prison?
Yeah, so I remember being in there in the holding cell in Mountjoy after going through the reception, and I sat in the bed and I had to make a choice. I'm either going to come in here with this chip on my shoulder that I've had my whole life, or I'm going to be the scared person who's in here. And that's what it was. I said, look, I'm going to be the scared person because I'm none of these people who I think I am. And that stood to me. I didn't go in there and I didn't try and be a hard man. I didn't try and fit in. I just was myself, and it stood to me. It got me through prison. Like,
it was incredible to think that those 4 years you stayed away from drugs, you behaved yourself, kept your head down, then came out, and you top of this street cred you got back. So the promises that you had for your family and your partner and your friends went out the window.
Yeah, so while I was in there, I would have made a lot of promises to my partner, a lot of promises to my family. I would have wrote a lot, and I would have said everything at the time what I thought was necessary. But as soon as I went outside where I'm from, I had this street credit that they all thought, he was in prison, he sold drugs, you know, and they all wanted me. And this was the acceptance that I was seeking my whole life. I wanted to fit in, so I latched onto this, you know. And
did you fall back into drug taking then again?
So but prior prison, I wasn't taking drugs as much, you know. I wasn't taking drugs. It was like a social thing. So after I came out of prison, it was really the social aspect of it came more and more and more. And then it was like rather than sitting around tables doing drugs, I was sitting on my own doing drugs, you know.
And did you ever think of selling them again, or would that...
No, it wasn't so much. I just liked the party, and I kept telling myself, I'm doing nobody any harm.
So how did your family react to this?
They didn't like it, you know, especially after everything that I've told them that I'm going to do. My partner, for one, she was fed up, you know. I told her all these promises and I said all these things, and then I thrown it back in her face as soon as I came out of prison. And so they all had to give me a wide berth.
So they gave you a wide berth.
Yeah.
Did you resent them for that?
100%. Absolutely. In my head, I was thinking, how dare they? But little did I know that they were showing me tough love. They had to do this. If they were co-signing everything that I was doing and feeding me addiction and feeding me habit and paying me bills and doing all these things, I'd never stop. So they had to give me a wide berth.
And what was the one thing, or was there one thing, or was there a number of things that made you then contact Coolmine and try and change your life around?
So it would have been my 29th birthday. I was living in a car, homeless. I was lying in the passenger seat, covering myself with a couple of jackets, and a knock on the window, and it was Blanchardstown. Well, I think it was Blanchardstown Garda station. But then he was a guard, and he asked me, he says, look, if you've had complaints, you need to move. And I said, look, I can't move, you know. I says, the car doesn't start. I said, it's lying up here. I says, I'm residing in it. This is my home. And he didn't look through me. He looked at me for where I was at there and then, and he just said, look, OK, no problem. He could have arrested me. He could have got the car impounded. He could have done everything. But he didn't. He decided to say, OK, look after yourself. You know, and it was those words that still stick with me today, because that's what I done. I got back into the car and I was like, this has to stop. Now, at this point, I had 2 kids. I had a partner there. I had a family that loved me. I had everything. But I was just going in the wrong direction. I says, how am I going to overcome this?
Were you seeing the kids?
At the time, I wasn't seeing the kids.
No, at that time you weren't. When you were living in the car, you weren't seeing your family, you weren't seeing the kids. They had totally blanked you.
They had to, you know. They had to, because they had to...
They didn't want you to be part of the children's life like the way you were.
Of course. My partner had to protect my kids, and she wouldn't have wanted my kids being hurt.
What difference did Coolmine Rehabilitation Centre then? That just turned around.
So prison was hard. Kilmoyne was harder, and that's the God's honest truth. I had to go in there and I had to identify what I was doing. I had to come to terms with all the problems that I thought like that I had. I had to speak openly of my issues. But it's the best decision I've ever made, and still to this day, they've supported me in everything that I do. So I try and support them and give back to them in everything that I can right now.
Because you're working there, which is an amazing story, the turnaround there. You went for help, and now you're helping other people. Tell us about what you're doing in Kilmoyne.
So now I'm an evening support worker in Kilmoyne in the women's residential treatment. I help the women. I also link in with the men as well some of the times. I'm studying now in UCD, doing a diploma in alcohol, community and addiction work. So from one extreme to another, yeah, it's complete 360.
And is fitness become a big part of it as well?
Fitness has. So Kilmoyne encouraged me to go and get back into football, which I've done. I played for Mexico over in the World Cup. And I played for Ireland, sorry, in Mexico.
Let's get to that story.
But yeah, fitness has become, so I've set a running club up also through COVID for people who have some sort of outlet, because running has become an outlet for me. So I'm now taking on the David Goggins Challenge as well for the third time in aid of Kilmoyne. This Friday I'll start running 4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours.
Wow.
4 miles every 4 hours for 48 hours?
Yeah, so 6.5k. I'll start on the Friday at 4 p.m, 8 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night, 4 in the morning, all the way through till Sunday, trying to raise money for Kilmoyne and D15 suicide awareness.
And how can people help you if they want to help you?
So on my Instagram handle, Daniel M. Bradley, you'll find the GoFundMe link and stuff. Look, I'll never ever stop addiction or homelessness or anything like that, or suicide, but we can try and prevent it, and that's what I'm trying to do now.
It's an inspirational story, Daniel, really is, and fair play to you for turning your life around, and for your kids as well and partner. It is really inspirational, and I think a lot of people who might be watching this might know people, and to not know whether to give it the tough love like your family did or the support that the Garda did is just amazing. So listen to Daniel Moore, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
What's your Instagram handle again, Daniel?
So it's Daniel M. Bradley.
Daniel M. Bradley, and then your GoFundMe page is there as well. And then, of course, if you need any information, we have contacts for